Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go.
Hello, welcome to Purple Daily, daily Vikings entertainment, where we just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die. Since they haven't ever won a Super Bowl, that's not going to fall into this ranking that Judd's about to give us because they've come up short of the Super Bowl. But we bring to you today, Judd's been a Vikings observer since like the late 70s?
Late 70s. 78's the first year that I really started to hone in on and watch the Minnesota Vikings.
So in your lifetime, we're going to bring you the 10 best on-field moments in Vikings history, according to the sports dad, Judd Zilgan.
Right. Very subjective.
Yeah, well.
So like if you're like, sports dad, how could you not choose that? Well, it's either because I didn't think it deserved it or I just plumb forgot.
Yeah, send your complaints to @JZolgat on Twitter if you disagree with this.
You can do that.
And this list today is powered by our friends over at Quick Trip, the official gas station and convenience store of Purple Daily here, Judd.
Yep, exactly right. You know what? I don't need a top 10 list to tell you about Quick Trip because Quick Trip is one of one. That's right. It doesn't need to be on a top 10 list because it's the only one when it comes to convenience. And I hesitate to call it a convenience store because a convenience store, I think, has a connotation that's not true to Quick Trip. First of all, if you are watching this right now, you are looking at just a long list of delicious items available at Quick Trip. And you're probably thinking, sports dad, that looks like a grocery store. Damn right it does, because that's what Quick Trip offers. They've got the quality gas guarantee. If you stop in for a snack, that's cool. But if you stop in for gasoline and you're looking to fuel up for dinner for perhaps you and the family, you can get it at Quick Trip. A couple of days ago, I was at a Quick Trip, and not only did I get a delicious meal, but the gal there came up and said, "Sir, do you have a Quick Trip coupon?" I'm like, "No, I don't." She said, "I'll get you one so you will save." You talk about service.
Wow.
You talk about convenience. It's all about the people at Quick Trip. Again, one of one when it comes to where you should stop.
Yes. So we're counting down from 10 here, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I'm going to start at 10. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not going to blow the lead here.
So these are the 10 best on-field moments in Judd's life watching Vikings football, starting right around like late 70s, early 80s.
Yep. Number 10, you're going to laugh, but as you laugh, just remember it's your fault and it's Declan's fault. That would be the biggest comeback in NFL history, December 17th, 2022.
Yes.
So number 10, and yes, this is low because it was a great comeback.
What was it like being there for that game at the end, Judd?
The first half was terrible. First half was terrible because the Colts took a 33-rip lead. It was enough to make some people leave to start a show like Ventline early.
A life of regret if that were to happen.
And abandon the stadium because you can't do a show from inside the stadium because we don't have the rights to do so. So I decided, you know what, the second half, it's going to continue to be a blowout. It'll probably be 60-0. I pulled into the parking lot at Hubbard. As I recall, the Colts scored again. And then the Vikings come back for a memorable 39-36 OT victory, breaking the previous record of comebacks, which was in the 92 playoffs, 32 points down. The Oilers came back against the Bills. So number 10 is a list that unfortunately begins with a very regrettable sports dad moment, the moment that he was strong-armed by his supposed friends to leave the game.
And I'm going to put it on. I'm going to put it on the Purple Daily audience that desperately wanted us to go live at halftime. We said, "Hey, we're here to serve the audience."
I didn't have a choice too because I couldn't stay there. Like I could have stayed there and blown off the show.
Yeah, but you can't go live during a game from the stadium, from the media.
Correct. Yeah. And in my opinion, it's like, well, I'm there to work. I'm not there to just watch the game. So if we're going to start the show, I should be on the show.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
It is to this day the most consumed episode of Purple Daily or Vikings Ventline. I think the YouTube version of it is up to like 250,000 views, and it's just you staring at the TV.
I was bullied.
Yeah,
I was bullied by associates and listeners and viewers, and I had to leave. And it's the greatest comeback, and probably will be for a long time. I mean, hell, the last one lasted for 30 years. So it's going to be the greatest comeback for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, the opportunities, because you have to have a certain actually the Bills Oilers one, those are playoff teams that are doing it. I was gonna say you have to have a certain level of crappy team that just folds the minute they get punched in the third quarter, and then enough offensive firepower to even score 30 some points in a half. So, and some lucky things here and there have to happen, timing, all that stuff. Yeah.
So that's number 10.
Okay.
Number 9, November 13th of 2022, the Justin Jefferson catch. So
Wow.
this is going to be a compilation of games, great games, and just to be clear, for those of you masochists who are like, yeah, let's wait till we get to the Blair Walsh miss kick. No bad stuff on here. So
Yeah.
it's a top 10 of good things. So
Yeah.
if you're thinking I'm going to like weave in terrible, that's a different list.
We'll probably do that list later on this summer.
But that's a different list.
Yeah.
This is the Jefferson catch at 9. So if you go back on this, and I do think this is arguably not the greatest play necessarily, but the greatest catch in Vikings history. So
Ooh.
like we could debate like the Miracle catch, right?
Yeah.
That's not
level of difficulty, not even close.
exactly right. That's probably that's not probably. That's a bigger play. But this is, I would say, the greatest catch that at least I've seen. 4th and 18, Vikings down by 4, late in the game, in November in Buffalo. So the environment is not favorable in any way, shape, or form. Visiting fans, it's November in Buffalo, you're outdoors. Kirk Cousins unleashes a pass that, if you recall, was high. It was now it was probably about as well thrown a ball as you could situationally make, but that doesn't mean that it was a simple catch. Justin Jefferson not only goes up and gets it with one hand, but somehow with no leverage on the defender, whose name was Cam Lewis, he rips the ball with one hand out of Lewis's grasp because it was an interception. It should have been picked, and comes down with the ball for what I consider to be the greatest catch I think I have seen in Vikings history.
Yeah. Now, of course, the pessimist or the fatalist would say, we're ranking regular season catches among top 10 greatest on-field moments in franchise history. When you've never won a Super Bowl, yes, and that catch should absolutely be celebrated. It's been on shirts. At one point, we partnered with a company that was putting it on plaques, having Justin Jefferson sign it.
It's a great photo.
It is a signature play in the history of this franchise.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And it kind of, along with the Colts win, those two plays or those two moments really encapsulated the entire spirit of the 2022 season, in which you didn't blow anyone out. You probably shouldn't have been winning the 13 games or whatever it was that you won.
Right.
But just the resolve and the clutch factor of that team is going to, that's one of the most memorable teams in Vikings history, the 2022 Vikings.
Right, because it also, the last 2 years of Zim was no fun. Like, it was a joyless experience, right? And the first year of O'Connell was as polar opposite of that as possible. You know what I forgot about that catch, though? That catch is what led to the drive going down to the 1 yard line where Kirk was stopped. The Bills got the ball back.
It's crazy. Game was over.
Yeah, the game's done. The Bills are going to win, and Josh Allen fumbles. Kendricks recovers for a touchdown. I had forgotten the synchronicity of how just totally bizarre the sequence was, because the Vikings didn't score on that drive, but of course that drive played an enormous role in them scoring. Then the Bills come back and get a field goal to tie it to force OT, and the Vikings win on a Greg Joseph field goal.
I was living in Seattle at the time, and I had, like, my home studio was on, it was a 4-level row house in Seattle. And like a lot of the buildings in Seattle are just like built upwards and narrow. So we had like 4 levels to our townhouse. And our main living room level was on the 3rd level where we were watching the game. And then my office was on the 2nd level. So you got to go down like a long flight of steps. Once the Bills got the ball back, I went downstairs into my office to get ready for vent line, because like all they were going to do is kneel out the clock.
Right.
And I didn't think that, I guess kneeling is going to be kind of hard from where they are. I just didn't think about that part of it.
Right.
So I jump in, and Declan is like fixated on the TV. He's in the production room, and he's like fixated on the TV. He's like, "Did you see what just happened?" And I was like, Yeah, God, he fumbled, like, but what a freaking, and he's like, no, dude, or I'm sorry, I said, oh yeah, Kirk got stopped,
got
man.
stopped,
Like,
yeah.
oh man. And he goes, no, like the Vikings have the ball back. And I'm like, how? Flip the
Crazy.
game back. So many people have a story like that where they turn the game off, they went about their day, they come back later, like, wait, the Vikings won?
Yep.
So, all right. Okay. Number 8.
Number 8, November 1st, 2009, Brett's return to Lambeau. Now, I covered this at the time for the Star Tribune, and this was a season of course, zaniness and craziness. But this might have been as far as the Favre tour went. You know, and Favre was a rock star. He's like the Beatles. He's Taylor Swift. Everywhere he goes, eyeballs went. People
He
went.
was, yeah.
And him going back to a place where he had played 16 years and was beloved and had such a, at the time, acrimonious departure. And the fact that how dare he come back as a Viking. Brett Favre not only returns, and if you go back in our archives, Sage joined us a bunch of times or a few times to talk about this. And Rosenfels is great because he talks about, as Favre's backup, how nervous Favre was and the energy that day.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, goes 17 of 28, 244 yards. So a good day, 4 touchdowns, 128.6 passer rating. And that completed a sweep of the Packers because I think it was the night before game 163 at the Metrodome, which I think was on a Tuesday. The Vikings had played host to the Packers on a Monday night at the Dome. Anyway, 7 touchdowns and no picks in 2 games. But I'll never forget when Favre came running through the visitors' tunnel at Lambeau, Phil. The place literally felt like it was going to take off because people were booing so loudly.
Burning their jerseys.
I've never heard boos like that.
And then 5 minutes later, after he retires, they bring him back with Bart Starr and Aaron Rodgers and retire his little jersey,
and now it's
or
all
Ring of Honor,
forgiven.
or whatever.
It's all forgiven. But anyway, so yeah, Brett Favre's return to Green Bay was one of the highlights and one of the absolute most zany things I saw in that season, which was completely off the charts.
What's funny is, Packer fans kind of go back to the NFC Championship game, like, he did the dumb thing he always does at the end of the games, which is kind of a self-own, because he did the same thing for the Packers in 2007 at Lambeau Field against the Giants through a devastating interception. But it is funny that it's something that Vikings fans will always have over Packer fans, that, your wife left you and came to us for a couple of years.
And if he had won a Super Bowl here, I'm still curious to see what the narrative on Favre and Green Bay is like today. I do think they make amends to a certain degree. I don't think it would have been nearly as quick as it was, though. Do you?
No. Do you think it would have happened even 10 years after? I mean, he would have won a Super Bowl with the Vikings.
Know. Well, and then what did the Vikings do for him? Ring of Honor?
Ring of Honor, absolutely Ring of Honor. I think we would have felt just as much ownership of Brett Favre as the Packers.
And the
if
Packers,
he had won the Super Bowl.
In 16 years with Brett, 2 appearances, 1 Super Bowl title.
Yep. Oh, funny. Okay, number 7.
October 5th, 1998. We're staying in Lambeau Field, Randy Moss, the breakout part 1, I'm calling it. The breakout part 1. So Moss is off to a great start. Caught a touchdown in his first game against Tampa. Clearly is going to change games. But this is where he started to change the league. Primetime game. First of all, that team, which went, of course, 15-1 in the regular season, they beat the Packers 37-24. They improved to 5-0, and Randy Moss catches 5 passes for 190 yards and 2 touchdowns. And what people forget is there was a holding call that brought a 75-yard touchdown pass. So take that and add it. So he could have had 3 touchdowns, another 75 yards. And I've told the story before. The next year, Ron Wolf in the draft, the Packers' first 3 picks are defensive backs 6 feet or taller.
Yeah.
Because the Packers are like, we have to have someone who can cover him, and our guys were too small. Randy Moss changed the game, and I really think that this was the first I think this was his first game where it's like, okay, we're all going to have to adjust.
That's crazy. Yeah. Yeah, that was, if I remember right, it was a Monday night game, and it was before the Thanksgiving game against the Cowboys, which I'm sure will pop up here.
Yep,
so,
it was.
Yeah. Okay. Number 6.
Yep. And by the way, we forget, in the same game, Favre, 3 picks. Doug Peterson replaced him.
Oh, benched.
And the reason why it was 37-24 is good old Dougie boy is the guy that led the rally.
So
Favre
that's
got
interesting.
benched by
that
Holmgren.
was like in his prime. He was coming off a couple years earlier, MVPs, right?
Yeah, but Mike
Super
would get super pissed, and Holmgren benched his ass.
So the Packers had played in the Super Bowl the year before, got beat by the Broncos, right? So they're coming off like back-to-back Super Bowl appearances, Favre MVPs.
Yes. Benched.
Man. Crazy.
All right. Number 6, correct?
Yep, number 6.
All right, November 26th, Thanksgiving Day, 98, the Breakout Part 2. How about that? I'm tying together themes here.
I like it. I love it.
The Breakout Part 2, Thanksgiving Day in Dallas. It's my personal opinion that Moss's breakout came in Green Bay, but I think there's a lot of generation of fans from them who recall this as the absolute breakout. Vikings improved to 11-1, 46-36. They are dancing on the star. Moss in that game only caught 3 passes, all went for touchdowns.
Yeah, that's crazy.
163 yards. Chris Carter catches 7 passes for 135 yards, and Leroy Horde, of all people, runs for 2 scores. But this is another Moss game. If the Packers game didn't get your attention, this certainly did. I consider them to be the 2 defining games of Randy's rookie season, which is littered with ridiculous games, but I think these are the 2 defining games.
Is that Cowboys game on Thanksgiving the defining game of his career?
Oh, boy.
Patriots fans, I don't know, they probably point to a game or two in 07. Yeah. I think it is. I think it is the most recognizable, defining game of his entire career because he never won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I don't know about the Patriots. That's a good question. See, and what's funny, though, is I remember, I was 28 at the time. I remember the Packers game more so just because it was on a Monday night and it was the first game of its, and they kicked the Packers' ass in Green Bay. Yeah. But there's a lot of people like you who remember the Dallas game, and those to me are the 2 games. If you were to say, if a young fan was to say, I've heard a lot about this Moss guy, show me a couple of games that sort of define him. These are, if nothing else, his White Album. They're his
I agree.
double album, instantly platinum. Yeah. It's like a double album is too much. It's like, not in this case. That's not.
I'm a Metallica guy. It's the Black Album. I am a Bon Jovi guy. It's Slippery When Wet.
Yep.
Yes, totally agree. Okay, we're halfway through. So number 10, these are the best on-field moments in Vikings history in Judd's lifetime, starting in the 1980-ish. 2022 Colts comeback, the JJ catch against Buffalo, Favre's return to Green Bay in 09, Moss breakout part 1 against Green Bay in 98, Moss breakout part 2 against Dallas on Thanksgiving in 98. Let's take a deep breath and shout out our friends at Ugly Deck here before we go any further, Judd Zulgad.
Let's absolutely do that. Springtime is here, and I got news for you. Summer is on the way, and you look outside right now, and let's say your deck is one thing. Phil, I'll use the word ugly. Ugly deck. You got an ugly deck. And now you're looking at these decks, and you're like, holy smoke, Sports Dad, can I get one? And the answer is absolutely yes. Uglydeck.com is where you turn, and now here's the best part. You can install or DIY. Uglydeck.com offering up to $1,000 off for a limited time. With install, you're going to get the best carpenters. That's my route. I need install. But if you're a DIY guy, guess what? You can do that too. You get the best coaches who are going to help you from start to finish. uglydeck.com. Setting up appointments now at their Shakopee Deck Design Showroom. Just check them out, uglydeck.com, and make sure that you tell them the guys from Purple Daily told you that you said no more ugly decks for you.
Amen. Shout out also to our friends at Federated Mutual Insurance Company. So there are a lot of business owners we've met who consume this podcast on a regular basis. We thank you for that. So as a business owner, you understand the importance of protecting your reputation, your workplace, your employees, your financial assets. The team at Federated is ready to help your team by creating a custom lineup of industry-specific coverages and risk management services to help you stay at the top of your game. Contact your local Federated rep for more information and find out more at federatedinsurance.com, where it's our business to protect yours. All right, number 5.
Okay, so I can hear the oldsters right now like me saying, okay, this Ma stuff is great from 98, but you don't have anything from the 80s. Sports Dad, what are you doing? You're letting me down, and I'm just going to say patience pays off, because I'm going to take you back to January 9th. 1988, which of course is the 1987 season, but this is playoff time. Anthony Carter in San Francisco. All right. Anthony Carter in a divisional round game after the Vikings had beat the Saints, and Carter played a key role in that game. But this is Joe Montana.
It's a dynasty.
Yes, this is the big, bad Bill Walsh-led Niners. You got no chance. In fact, I looked it up. The Niners, at the stick that day, favored by 11 points in a playoff game.
That's big time.
In a playoff game. In what had been a strike-shortened year in which replacement players were used, and I believe the Vikings replacement players went 0-3. San Francisco was 13-2.
Yeah.
Anthony Carter that day, a man who, by the way, Vikings, belongs in your Ring of Honor. Make it happen. Had a then playoff record 227 receiving yards on 10 catches, no touchdowns, but a 63-yard reception. And again, as an 11-point dog, the Vikings win 36-24.
Oh, gosh.
Now, let me give you some context, too. Because that was Jerry Rice. That was Joe Montana. Jerry Rice that day held to one reception for 16 yards after he caught 22 touchdowns. 22 in 87. So this is pre-passing happy league. Joe Montana benched by Bill Walsh in favor of
Steve?
In favor of a young, yes, for Steve Young, who had just been acquired, from Tampa Bay. I believe the off season before and years after the fact, Bill Walsh would call this the worst loss of his coaching career.
Wow.
So that's some context, but it's Anthony Carter, 227 receiving yards on 10 catches. So there is your 80s shout out. And again, Anthony Carter belongs in the Ring of Honor for the Vikings.
I agree. That's the first jersey that young Phil Mackey ever put on. Little Hutch helmets, Anthony Carter jersey.
Great player.
Yeah, he was a stud, man. He was, but then Chris Carter came along and they both played together for a minute, and Chris Carter broke the single season receiving record, and he just kind of overshadowed very quickly. And so when you think Carter and he's overshadowed by other great receivers and by a guy with the same last name who overshadowed him throughout the 90s. But yeah, like at his peak, Anthony Carter was one of the best receivers in the NFL and one of the best in Vikings history. All right, number 4.
Number 4, November 4th, 2007, a game that we both covered in the Metrodome press box, and that would be Adrian Peterson's record-setting day. So the Vikings are playing the Chargers, and this is one of the most incredible games by a player, not necessarily because the fact that day Peterson went for a NFL record. It still stands to this day, 296 yards rushing on 30 carries and 3 touchdowns. But because of this fact, 253 of his 296 yards came in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
At halftime, he was trending towards like an 85-yard day.
It's crazy.
By the end of the game, he had set a record that had been established in 2003. But the incredible thing about this game is, and if you recall, in what became a 35-17 Vikings win, This is the game that was marked by the Vikings attempting, I believe it was Ryan Longwell, a like 60-something yard field goal as the first half expired. It was caught by Antonio Cromartie, right?
Antonio Cromartie, 109 yards.
109-yard touchdown return. The Vikings get booed off the field and then come back and do this. And the last thing about this is Adrian Peterson only got the record because the PR department called down to the sidelines and said he is on the precipice of setting the NFL single-game rushing record. You should put him back in, or he falls short of that record. What a day.
Do we think 296 is even feasible? Because you had several decades, and this was kind of the tail end of the bell cow running back era, maybe like throughout the duration of his career.
Sure.
Guys just aren't getting, first of all, guys aren't getting the carries needed. Like when Jamal Lewis broke it, didn't he have like 36, like some absurd number of carries? Now I feel like
I didn't write down the carries, yeah.
Guys aren't getting, you're not getting 30 carries as a single running back nearly as often. So having one guy, you'd have to have like 2 or 3 80, 75-yard crazy runs.
It's a good point.
It's just, it's
odds or no.
It's tough, man. It might stand for a very long time. 296.
Yeah, because and now with all the committees, like, are there enough star backs who are left in for games? And then the question is, are you going to run the ball enough?
Yeah.
It's a really good point.
Yeah. Okay, we've emerged into the top 3 best on-field moments in Vikings history.
All right. We are about to go all over the map from a time period, but number 3 is September 27th of 2009. Brett Favre to Greg Lewis in the back of the end zone for a touchdown. In what I would call one of the, might be regular season wise, Phil, this might be the most remarkable finish I've seen from the Vikings that doesn't involve like a Hail Mary type of pass, because this is a legit pass.
Yeah.
32 yards, 2 seconds left. Brett Favre, who had spent the first 2 weeks, wins at Cleveland and Detroit, managing the game really well and doing a really nice job. Vikings had won both, but certainly was not being asked to carry the load. Adrian basically did, and Brett Favre played well. Well, in this case, the Vikings are about to lose. And remember, this is 3 games in to a season that turned out to be magical. Mm-hmm. And you're about to go to 2-1, which is no great shakes. And Greg Lewis, who had been obtained from Philadelphia and and was only playing because Percy Harvin had to get a blow because he was exhausted. So Greg Lewis was not even supposed to be really, in a perfect world, on the field, goes into the back of the end zone, and Favre throws that 32-yard laser beam. Yeah. And Lewis equally is unbelievable for especially a guy that was pretty much a slappy. One hand out, slows it, makes the catch, and manages to get his toes in bounds for a touchdown. I think beyond the 2 plays that I'm about to get to, which are both miraculous plays, this might be the greatest end for like that is a normal pass, but that's not a normal play.
Yeah, a couple things. I mean, we were both in the press box covering that game. I remember flying out of my seat like as it happened, just, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this. But my initial reaction, much like I think most people who watched it live, was there's no way he stayed in bounds. It did, like at real time, he was flying through the back of the end zone.
Yep.
And it just looked like there was no way he got his feet down.
Yep.
And they showed the replay on the press box TV monitors, and it was like, wow, that is. And you kind of wonder if Percy Harvin had still been in the game, or if it was Sidney Rice running that route instead. Does it go out of bounds? Is Percy Harvin tall enough to jump up that high? Because Greg Lewis is taller than he is. And the other thing, not to be discounted, Brett Favre at age 39, I think at the time, the mobility to get out of the pocket, buy himself some time, dodge an edge rusher, get smoked, right? He was laying on the ground, if I remember right.
Oh, he took a huge hit.
Yes, when that ball hits the hands of Greg Lewis, just all around. And that was the play where you said, "Okay, now we're here.
We're on
now
to something.
Brett Favre is here. Yeah. This is the
plane
magic."
Has landed.
Yep.
You're right. Do you recall who the 49ers starting quarterback was that day? Because I had forgotten until I was going
Was it
through.
Sean Hill, right?
It was Sean Hill.
Yeah, Sean Hill.
Sean Hill starting
That's
at
hilarious.
quarterback.
Yep.
But anyway, what a finish.
By the way, Alex Boone was on the 49ers.
Oh,
Can't remember if he was starting, but
he must have been a young guy at the time, right?
Pretty sure he was on that team. Yep.
Wow. All right.
Okay, number two.
Number two, December 14th, 1980, Metropolitan Stadium, Bloomington, Minnesota, the Miracle at the Met. This is the game in which the Vikings trailed 23-9 in the fourth quarter. Tommy Kramer passed for 2 touchdowns to Ahmad Rashad in the last 2 minutes, including the play that everyone remembers, which is the 46-yard Hail Mary pass in which the ball got tipped around. A Cleveland defender, instead of batting it down, tried to basically, I don't know what he tried to do, but he kept the ball alive. Rashad catches the ball around the 1-yard line and backs into the end zone. It gives the Vikings the division title. But the incredible thing about this is also simply the drive.
Yeah.
The drive, the Vikings got the ball, 14 seconds left, no timeouts at their own 20.
Yeah.
So Jerry Burns / Bud Grant called for a hook and lateral play on the first play. Kramer passes to Joe Sensor, who laterals to Ted Brown. Brown runs out of bounds after he gains 39 yards left with 5 seconds left, and that sets up the pass to Rashad. But the whole thing was as improbable as you could possibly get. And this is one of the games that I saw. That is why I fell in love with sports.
Yeah.
The pop when that dude caught that ball and that stadium realized was off the charts.
Yeah.
Just great.
Yeah, the setup, I mean, you're right. I went back and watched that game. I think we might have done a pie chart of that game last year. And just like watching that game, I had never seen the game. I've seen the highlight, but just watching the game back, football just looked a lot different. It's funny how you look up, and even when like watching the Adrian Peterson 296 game, it's like, wow,
Yes.
Well, you wake up 15 years later, and football just looks way different now.
In the 90s, it looks archaic.
It does.
Like
Dude,
in
last
the 90s,
night,
it's like, whoa, what's this?
I was flipping around last night, and I landed on the 1994 NFC Championship game between the 94 season. It was like January of 95 between the Niners and the Cowboys at a mud-soaked Candlestick Field.
Those were great.
And yeah, it was Steve Young's first trip to the Super Bowl as the starting quarterback. And it was, God, first of all, fields don't get to that point of deterioration anymore.
Oh, Candlestick was a dump. It was glorious.
Yeah.
The history was great, but it was a complte dump.
Mud everywhere, neck rolls.
Was Dion a Cowboy or a Niner?
Niner.
At the
That
time?
was his one year. And then it's funny.
He bounced back and forth.
Funny you brought that up. So I got done watching that game. I just caught like the fourth quarter of it, and I was like, Dion. Yeah, I started going down a Deion Sanders rabbit hole, and then I found the 30 for 30 on the day that Dion played or tried to play both a game with the Falcons against the Dolphins in Miami, and then an NLCS playoff game in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
And it documents him like on a helicopter, on a private jet, napping, tired, pissing off the Braves organization, and all this stuff.
Yeah,
it's crazy, man. And that brings us to the number one moment, on-field moment in Vikings history.
Cannon steps into it. Pass is caught. Diggs, sideline, touchdown, unbelievable. Vikings win it.
Maybe I'm being presumptuous by firing that soundbite.
I'm glad because we didn't talk about this, that you were exactly right. January 14th, 2018. Now known as the Minneapolis Miracle, but a play that nonetheless, and again, these last 2 plays are the greatest touchdowns to end games, but they're both improbable. Mm-hmm. They're both completely. The Favre to Lewis to me was as crazy as the play was. It was not a, okay, hope to God it goes right play as much as this was. This was a play where everything went right. And you know, Stephon Diggs, the whole plan was get out of bounds and Kai Forbath can try and win the game, right? And when the Saints defenders collided and they whiffed on Diggs and he looks, and if you go back and watch the film, you can see it because he's going to get out of bounds and he looks straight ahead And it's like, there's no one there.
It's crazy.
There's no one there. You know what I had forgotten? I had forgotten the title of the play, which I guess
Seven Heaven, right?
Ironically, though, well, yeah, that's the second part. Buffalo Right, Seven Heaven.
Yeah.
Sort of ironic. Stefan Diggs, of course, then goes on to
Buffalo
play
Right, yeah.
for the Buffalo Bills. But anyway, yeah, this has to be it. And it's funny. It's funny when you talk about, and I know that they both did not end in the Super Bowl, unfortunately, for the Vikings. But when you talk about like magical years, right? They always have signatures. They always have like just signatures. And in a year in which Case Keenum was this improbable hero, and in which he clearly drove his head coach, and I think a lot of football people, up the wall, right? That this play, and that he had the intestinal fortitude to make that throw, and how it came together, absolutely a signature play in this franchise's history. So that, to me, has to be number one.
It is, yes. And can you believe, by the way, it's been 7 years since that play, or 6.5 years. But we are like 3 years away from the Vikings, if it works out, putting together a 10-year reunion celebration of the Minneapolis Miracle.
Yeah.
Now, Case Keenum is still the backup for C.J. Stroud in Houston.
Yeah.
He's 36 years old, so he'll probably be done playing within the next 2 or 3 years. I don't know that Diggs will be done playing yet by the time that 10-year anniversary rolls around. And I don't know if he would take part in an anniversary. Yeah, he's kind of a weird
It all got
cat.
very weird.
But I hope at some point they can bring everyone back together, and because there were some weird, hard feelings. I mean, obviously Diggs demanded a trade like 2 years later, and Keenum was
Zim
devastated.
won't come back if Spielman comes back.
Yeah. I mean, dude, Keenum was devastated that the Vikings didn't sign him to a long-term contract. He went to Denver, and Denver gave him the deal, and he started all 16 games, and it wasn't a total train wreck, but now he's back to being a career backup again. But that deserves to be celebrated now that like hard feelings can kind of dissipate to some extent. Who are they going to get back?
Well,
for the
I mean,
tenure? I don't know.
In the season opener that year, if I'm correct in recalling this, was against the Saints at home in prime time.
Mm-hmm.
Bradford looks really good. They win that game, and then he like mysteriously is just out, right? Like it's like his knee's gone, but I mean, we didn't know if it was like at the time, is it 2 weeks? Is it 3 weeks? And so you're sort of like, well, they're sunk. And Keenum steps in, and I know he drove Mike nuts, but what a magical run. And I will say, first of all, I'm glad that at least for a short time, Case got paid, but his fall off from that was one of the most predictable things of all time. Like, I don't think any of us said, well, you really should sign him for 5 years now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think you could make it. They made the right move by signing Kirk Cousins at the time. And then I think you and I took issue with like the subsequent contracts after it was obvious that they missed their window.
Yeah.
But you do wonder, okay, what if they had brought him back on like a 2-year deal? Like the Broncos gave him like 2 years, $36 million or something. Yeah. How would things have played out differently?
I don't think the head coach would have tolerated him for much longer.
Ironically, he couldn't tolerate the next guy either.
Yeah,
so.
And I think Mike would have been itching to bench him. Don't you?
But then Bridgewater would have come back a little healthier, and maybe they give him a second shot coming back from the knee injury. I don't know if any of the scenarios work out well for the Vikings,
maybe.
But there it is. Those are the 10 best on-field moments in the history of the Vikings, at least in the sports dad's life, with the top 5 rounding out. Number 5, Anthony Carter and the 200-plus yard receiving game against a dynasty 49ers team in the playoffs. Adrian Peterson's 296 at number 4. Favre to Lewis in 2009 at number 3. The Miracle at the Met and the Minneapolis Miracle rounding out the top 10 list. That's a pretty good list.
A lot of miracles.
No Super Bowl moments in there, so there's definitely space to bump some of these.
Oh, yeah. There's top 5 space.
Yep. Like a kick going through the uprights would be great to put on here. Maybe a David Tyree type signature catch in the Super Bowl. I can definitely bump a couple of these with some whiteout if needed, Vikings.
Yeah, number 10 can go.
The comeback? Yeah.
Comeback was fun, but it could be shooed to the honorable mention category without a problem.
Yeah, for sure. So there it is. Let us know. What are the honorable mentions that we missed? Throw them in the YouTube comment section here. Click the subscribe button and the like button. And yeah, thanks for hanging out with us here on Purple Daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl and change this top 10 list before we die.